Welcome, and welcome Okanagan, and we also have Prince Rupert, I think, joining us on video conference. So we have a couple of video conference sites. Welcome to the UBC Learning Circle, and we have quite a few on webinar. We have 38 attendees on webinar, so this is great. Conflict is popular. Conflict is popular, and we all need to learn and have the skills to get better at it. So, welcome to the UBC Learning Circle. We are up at UBC on the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam people, and it's a beautiful place, and really happy to welcome you here. Nice to see you on webinar, or on video conference and on webinar. So today we have Anna Soole with us, and she is of Métis, Cree, Ojibwe, and Lakota First Nations ancestry, as well as a whole other bit of mix, right? So that's so great. And she resides on Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. Where do you live?
I live in East Vancouver.
Oh, East Vancouver, yeah. Okay. And you've been working in transformative justice. I'm just going to read this. An agent for transformative justice and liberation, a trainer, a speaker, educator for nearly 2 decades. She's practiced as a social justice facilitator, an assertiveness coach, and a forum theater practitioner at provincial, national, and international levels, which is totally exciting. So we do have something in common there. She's worked with a lot of children, youth, adults, teachers, social workers, and service providers on their journey. My name is Leah Walker, and I am of English and Danish and Katma ancestry. And my family lives, most of my Indigenous relatives live on Seabird Island. Those are where my strongest kinship ties are. My role at UBC is as Associate Director for Education. So I oversee this, as well as support healthcare workers in becoming better healthcare providers for Indigenous people and communities, so through a number of initiatives, as well as supporting those Indigenous people that want to be at this university. So very passionate about that, love the work. And this, everyone, just to let you know what we're going to do today, we have a PowerPoint with some key points, but there's also role play. So I get to pretend, we can get into fights maybe. We're going to role play, and there will be opportunities for you to ask questions throughout. So if you're on webinar or on video conference, you can unmute, and we'll do that at a couple of points if you have questions, or if there's something that you want us to repeat or do again. Those on webinar, please feel free to type in your questions, and I will make sure that I respond to you and ask Anna.
Great.
So Anna, do you want to just start? Let us know what you're going to share with us today,
Sure.
How it's going to go,
Sure.
And let's have some fun. So today's session is until noon today, so 10:30 until noon. So we'll hopefully have you out of here by noon. And really nice to see you all. It looks like beautiful and sunny in the Okanagan, as it always is. Like, it's beautiful, and there might be some sun. Out there. I don't know. All right, go ahead, Anna.
So, Tanchit, Anna Soole, Dishinakashun. My name is Anna Soole, hello. And I'm so excited to be here, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of the traditional land that we're on. And I also want to acknowledge the ancestors of the land that we're on, and the land that everyone who's participating in this session is on. I want to acknowledge the ancestors of people, but also our animal ancestors and our plant ancestors and our stone ancestors, water, all the microbes. I just want to acknowledge everything and think about the connection that brings us all together, makes us all related. So even though we're not all in the same room, I'm really excited to be here in this present moment with each of you. And I'm just going to invite everyone to take a moment before we start to be present in our bodies, if that's something that works for you. So I'm just going to take personally a deep breath. Because, I'm excited and I want to get grounded, and I'm going to invite you to do the same and just say hello to your body. And I want to acknowledge that our bodies can actually be the site of a lot of oppression, and that sometimes when we're talking about this stuff, it's really easy to go, what? And leave our bodies, especially when we're not present in the room together. It's really easy to just be in our heads. So I'm going to invite people to really have as much of an embodied experience as you can today, because when we're talking about assertiveness and communication, we're really talking about embodiment. We're talking about body language. We're talking about tone of voice, facial expression, and the physiological experiences that we're having when we're communicating with people, or when people are communicating with us. So I think that that's something that we can translate today a little bit for ourselves if we practice at it. I also want to acknowledge that I'm just like human, and I'm like learning too. So I make lots of mistakes all the time, and I mess up all the time, and I just want to share that messing up is awesome, because it gives us opportunities to learn. So sometimes people come to workshops and they feel like they have to be perfect, and they feel like they can't make a mistake, and I just want you to remember that I really welcome mistakes, and I really welcome humanity, like being human. So yeah, that's kind of how I want to lay it out. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So I guess I'll just go with the first slide. I've got two things going on here. So the first slide I've brought is a quote from myself. So,
Okay.
Compassionate leadership requires us to name difficulties without shame or blame. And I think that that is the framework, the invocation for this whole session. Because really, when we're communicating, we are leading. We're leading ourselves, we're leading others, and many of us are leaders in our communities, and so I think that there's something about overcoming shame and blame on ourselves and on other people. So we're gonna go into that. Some people might have heard of Brene Brown. So Brene Brown is a researcher storyteller, and she researched vulnerability and shame for many years, and she's written some books, and she's got some TED Talks, and she's really
Oh, I like the TED
I
Talks.
highly recommend. She's got two good ones. I haven't seen the rest if she's got more, but I've got lots of quotes from her today. But one of her quotes is, in order to be an effective leader, we must be willing to publicly fail. So I think the first step to being a good communicator is being willing to mess up and to take accountability for it, and to not let it make us feel like we're less than. We all screw up. So that's where I want to center this. You might see here, I've taken this off the internet. I couldn't find the credit, but your comfort zone is usually way over here, and where the magic happens is, somewhere else. So I really encourage people in this work to get out of their comfort zone. And it's not comfortable to be assertive. It's not comfortable to be sharing your needs openly and be vulnerable, which we're going to talk about. It's just not comfortable. But there's a difference between being unsafe and uncomfortable. And only you know what's really unsafe for you. I can't tell you what's unsafe for you. But what we're really talking about here is uncomfortable is that feeling where you're like thrown off, you don't really know what's going to happen next. You maybe have butterflies in your stomach or knots in your stomach. Uncomfortable isn't inherently unsafe. You're not going to die right now. That's the difference between unsafe and uncomfortable. Or you're not in physical danger. So I really encourage people to get out of their comfort zones a little bit. So you heard me talk about vulnerability, and I'm going to invite people to explore what vulnerability means to you. Brene Brown says that vulnerability is emotional risk, exposure, uncertainty, the most accurate measure of courage, and we're going to come back to courage quite a bit today, to let ourselves be seen and to be honest. So for me, vulnerability is actually just another word for honesty, for being really real. And obviously we don't want to walk around like completely exposed everywhere we go to everyone.
Yeah.
That's not safe.
No,
Difference
it's not.
between unsafe and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But because many of us have been hurt, especially Indigenous communities have been so harmed through colonization and genocide. When working with, I know that we've talked a little bit about working with Indigenous people, that's what this program is about, right? Mm-hmm. So when people are harmed, when people have trauma or PTSD or complex PTSD, you learn to not trust even when it is safe. So there's something about doing that healing work so that we can know when it is safe, so we can understand our own boundaries. So a boundary is a personal bubble, right? You've heard people say, this is my personal bubble, right? So a boundary could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be verbal, it could be somebody asking us a question we don't want to answer, and there's all kinds of boundaries, and our body gives us all kinds of information about what our boundaries are. So maybe my face gets really hot, or for me it gets bright red. Mm-hmm. That's not true for everyone. Some people get goosebumps or hair standing up on the back of their neck, or they smile uncontrollably, or cry when you don't want to. Have you ever cried when you didn't want to?
All the time.
Yeah, so that's a signal from our body telling us that a boundary has been crossed. And it could even be us crossing our own boundaries. And our body never lies to us. Even if it doesn't logically make sense, our body is giving us information about what our boundaries are, and we have a right to those boundaries. And, oh, thank you. And it's really important to recognize, like I said, the difference between being unsafe and uncomfortable. So I'm all about learning how to take my mask off, how to be more vulnerable, and figure out the places where vulnerability is okay. So in the animal kingdom, so I'm in theater as well, and in the animal kingdom, the animals, most animals, all mammals like walk around like this, right, on all fours. And humans decided to go, hey, let's stand up and expose all of our most vulnerable parts. So basically, we were walking around completely exposed and vulnerable. And what often happens is people actually want to cover our vulnerable body parts. But when we do that, it actually gives power away in some ways, because we're communicating with people through our body language that we feel uncomfortable. When I sit like this, even if I feel vulnerable doing it, I appear more confident. So this is an example of just being in charge of our bodies and how we're communicating with them. So how about an unmasquerade ball? Hi, I'm vulnerable. I'm exposed. It's nice to meet you. So I'm super into this idea. Now, one of the things that Brené Brown discovered is that vulnerability and shame are inherently linked. So connection is why we are here. If you think about a baby, when they're first born, they absolutely need to have connection, or they'll actually die. They'll die. Mm-hmm. Babies in orphanages that don't get touch often die, even if they're getting all their other needs met. So we are hardwired for connection. It's why we're here, and we absolutely need it. And the systems of oppression which I'm going to talk a little bit about more, that penetrate our society, that actually our society is built on, colonialism, genocide, white supremacy, all of these forms of oppression create an inherent sense of shame in actually everyone, even people who are the most privileged and powerful. Everyone is suffering. And I'm going to talk more about that. And when we feel shame, it unravels connection. It disconnects us from one another, because I can't be vulnerable with you if I don't feel worthy, if I don't feel worthy of sharing, if I feel like there's something inherently wrong with me. And the antidote to shame is empathy. The ability to listen deeply to another's story and to connect with their feelings. And empathy is actually, the 3 tenets of nonviolent communication are based on empathy. Empathy is understanding another person and really listening to them, really hearing who they are, not just what they're saying, but who they are, connecting on a deep level. But we can't do that if the person isn't also vulnerable. There has to be a give and take. And so taking that first leap of faith to be vulnerable, to get the empathy or to create the empathy for yourself is so challenging for so many of us, understandably. So Brené Brown again says, vulnerability is both the core of shame and it is the birthplace of joy, belonging, and love. So when we are afraid of our vulnerability, when we don't feel that we're valuable, it leads to more sense of shame. But when people who actually are not ashamed of their vulnerabilities, who actually feel that their vulnerability makes them lovable, their imperfection makes them lovable, those people actually have a more fulfilling and a wholehearted life. So this is a really important aspect. Just to be clear, there's a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is, I did something bad. Oops, what did I just do? There we go. Shame is I am bad inherently. And we've all experienced, have you ever been shamed in school?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I ask a room full of 30 people, out there, if people can hear this, raise your hand if you've ever experienced shame in school.
Oh my.
Yeah, okay. So the school system is actually designed this way. If you think about it, how do most classrooms, how are they set up?
Rows.
Rows.
Yeah.
So there's rows, and there's a teacher at the front, and the teacher's older and has more knowledge and knows everything. And there's who at the front? Who sits at the front?
All the good kids.
All the good kids. The kids who are participating in the system.
Right.
The kids who understand the system and who are benefiting from it in some way. Who's at the back?
The kids that are the bad kids.
The bad kids! But actually, there's a power position at the back.
Of course.
Because you can see everything in front of you, whereas the kids at the front, they can't see behind them.
That's right.
And if you think about power, systems of power, it's the same kind of thing. So when we talk about any kind of privilege, so maybe whiteness or maleness, or you get the idea, people who have privilege can't see behind them. They can't see their own privilege often. It's the people behind who can see what's really going on, but they don't have that kind of systemic power. And that actually affects how we communicate with one another. So today I want to talk about two kinds of communication, because nonviolent communication works really well when it's lateral, when there isn't a whole bunch of power over you. But if somebody has a whole bunch of systemic power over you, it's really hard to be like, when you put me in jail, I feel really hurt. You know, it's really hard.
Right.
So we actually have to use assertiveness, which doesn't go into the feelings aspect, it just goes into the boundary aspect.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about these two different methods. And this is something that I specifically do because I've seen that these two methods need each other, and I haven't seen this done anywhere else. I haven't seen these two put together anywhere else.
This is an Anna Soole method.
Anna Soole method.
All right.
So I think, did I already read? I did read that. So like I said earlier, the three basic tenets of NVC are self-empathy, receiving with empathy from others who are expressing to you, even if they're expressing to you in a potentially violent way. Now, I use the term violent in the term of meaning to violate. I mean, if somebody's trying to beat you up physically or doing something, you're in danger, you need to get out of there, right? You can't be like, I receive you with empathy. You gotta protect yourself. But what I mean when I say in a potentially violent way is someone who's not using language that is full of caring and compassion. Someone who's trying to violate your energy or your boundaries in some way. So, and the last one is expressing with honesty or being vulnerable. That's my little addition there. So being real, and that takes so much courage. So much courage, especially, it actually takes more courage with the people that we know and care about. It's so much harder to be vulnerable with people that we have ongoing relationships with, actually, when we don't know how to trust, or when the people who we were supposed to be able to trust have harmed us in our lives. So the interactions that we have in our life with our current relationships, whether they be friends or work or partners, they're almost always, if we haven't done a lot of healing work, they're almost always playing out what happened to us as children in some way.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We always bring our stuff to our work, even if we don't think we are.
Yeah, yeah.
For
And
sure.
and we can heal. We can heal. It's so exciting. We can learn skills, and we can learn to unpack, and we can learn to practice self-empathy and be kinder to ourselves and to one another. We really can learn that. So that's what this is for.
All right. Awesome.
So the word courage comes from the word cor in Latin, which means heart, which I love. And Brene Brown defines courage as to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. To tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. I mean, that really is courage. When I work with kids a lot. I work with kids, teenagers, adults, and I work with a program called I Grow where I teach this stuff to grade 4 to grade 7 girls, and it's pretty fun. And
That's where I met you.
oh, really?
Okay, got it.
Okay, nice.
Okay, got it.
All right. So I can't remember what I was going to say though.
No, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, your whole heart. You're talking
Your
about
whole
your whole
heart.
heart, and I think kids always connect with their whole heart, the whole
Yes.
story of who
Oh,
they are
yeah.
with their whole heart.
Yes, and I tell a lot of stories.
Yeah.
I tell a lot of personal stories, which I'll share with you some personal stories today.
Okay.
So, and I ask them, is courage the absence of fear, or is courage being afraid but doing it anyway?
Courage is being afraid of doing it anyway.
Exactly.
No one has, no, then you're not going where anywhere is.
No.
If you're not going where you're afraid, then it doesn't take any courage.
Exactly. So basically, being courageous is to be vulnerable. Being courageous is to face your vulnerability and take a risk. So, in order to experience connection that we're all hardwired for, we must be willing to be vulnerable. And in order to be vulnerable, we must be courageous. And vulnerability is not weakness, and that message is profoundly dangerous. Vulnerability is deeply strong. It's courage, it's strength. And one of the things that I love about this idea is that Indigenous communities already know this. Indigenous wisdom has already known this all over the world since the beginning of time. And what happens in a colonial state is that if people are comfortable with their vulnerability, they have too much power. So that school system is designed to take us away from our vulnerability. All of the systems are designed to make us feel ashamed of being vulnerable. It's set up physically in a particular way. Even the classrooms are rectangles. They've got fluorescent lighting. They're designed in a particular way. They're not connected to nature. They're not connected to our natural nature, our human nature. So it separates us and disconnects us inherently. So we're all traumatized. All of us are traumatized by this, but we don't think of it as trauma. We think of it as just every day.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have a deep inherent belief that cultural values will impact, how am I going to say this? The values of Western society are a little bit out of whack,
Yeah.
I would say. And one of the things that I see missing a lot is integrity. People in Western culture are not always raised in integrity. That's because it was lost when choices were made to participate in destruction of land and people and nature. So integrity is the alignment or integration of values and behaviors or actions. So it's integration. It's like, I know that I believe in this and I'm going to act on it. So if I believe in taking care of the environment but I don't recycle, do I have integrity? No.
No,
I give it up.
but we're working on it.
Yeah, and that's why I say at the beginning,
Yeah.
I'm not here
Yeah,
to
yeah.
judge anyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Integrity is hard. I use that example because sometimes I get lazy.
Yeah,
And I
right.
throw something in the garbage that shouldn't be put in the garbage. And every time I do it, it eats away at my self-esteem. Every time I do it, I'm letting myself down just a little bit
Mhm.
because I know I don't believe in doing that. So my life journey, my life path is to aim toward all of my actions being integrated with my value system. I'm not there. And it's really hard to be there in this culture.
And well, I also think, and this is all philosophical, and we're not getting to the work
We're
yet,
getting
but we are. But you're kind of, in some ways, going towards perfection, right? There's a line there between integrity and perfection. And perfection, of course, is no one can get there.
I think if that's your
That's the
value.
challenge.
But you see, my value isn't perfection.
No, I'm just saying, that's not my value either. Although, at least I try not to, but you can get integrity mixed up with perfection.
Yes, thank you for
when
saying
you're
that.
trying to,
Exactly.
you know,
Yes.
to go with your integrity and know that you let yourself off sometimes.
Because your value could be to forgive yourself when you make a mistake.
Okay.
So that would still be having integrity. So I do these things, and it eats away at my self-esteem.
Yeah.
And then I have to actively forgive myself also.
Right.
Because I understand there's a larger context. I'm really glad you said that,
Yeah.
because that really clarifies this.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
So integrity is also to do what you know is right, even when no one is looking. And that takes courage, and I have a story about that, which I'm going to share. Respect is another value that, for me, assertiveness is centered on. To feel and show deferential regard for yourself and others. Esteem, and to avoid violation of or interference with. And violate and violence come from the same place. So respect to me is the opposite of violence, right? That's what it is to me. We often hear the word bullying, and I'm going to tell a story about a time when I was bullied in high school. And really, bullying is just another word for violence. It's actually a word that I think sometimes when I'm working with kids, it gets used to not actually hold people to account for what they're really doing. Sometimes it's like they're just bullying, but bullying is a little soft.
Yeah.
It's actually verbal, physical, or emotional violence. It's repeated, and it has there's an element of power over. We're going to talk about power. So there is also a difference between oppression and conflict. So what we're talking about when there's power over someone, especially systemic power, is oppression. Conflict is that lateral, like you and I have a different value system. So conflict is inevitable. And it's really important for us to remember that because there are different ways of responding to conflict. There's avoidance, which is like, I'm gonna
That's what I do.
I absolutely
conflict for sure.
procrastinate.
Yeah.
I don't call people back. Totally, I'm still working on this.
Yeah.
Avoid. But it is inevitable. And the minute we can remember that it is inevitable, then we have to start to accept that we do have to learn how to deal with conflict. And for some people, they actually deal with conflict aggressively, which isn't better. But it does get things done, for sure. So conflict is two or more value systems coming up against each other. So when I was talking about value systems, so I might have a value system of making sure that we always eat dinner at like between 4 and 6 p.m. and that makes us a family. That's my value system. But my partner might have a belief that, like a value that, I don't know, I'm just making this up, that like we eat when we're hungry. Maybe that's their value system. So we might have constant conflict about that if we don't know how to communicate about our needs. Because really what we're talking about is needs. Values, needs, boundaries, they all interconnect with each other. So conflict is also, and this is a really important point, a potentially positive and productive force for change if harnessed constructively. So conflict is an indication that something needs to be changed or something needs to be unpacked, something needs to be opened up. So conflict is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to understand yourself better and to understand the person you're in conflict with. So there's this person named Tuckman who created the 5 stages of group development. And this, I think, works. This is specifically for like groups or work groups, but I think this works for any relationship, really. There's forming, where you're getting to know each other. There's no laid out, set way of doing things yet. And these can actually change. They don't have to be in this direct order.
Mm-hmm.
Storming, which is conflict, which is unpacking what's different. What do you want? What do I want? How are we going to do this? And sometimes that gets really nasty, especially if we don't have good skills to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it ends there. Sometimes things fall apart before we can get anywhere else. Norming is when things start to come together and we start to find a common language. We start to understand each other's values and needs. And performing isn't like standing up in front of a group. It's doing the thing that we're here to do. Whether it's loving each other or whether it's creating something together or working together, whatever it is, performing is once we've established those norms and we know how to storm well,
Mm-hmm.
and we can just create or do what it is that we're here to do. And then all relationships adjourn at some point in our lives. And so there's grief and loss associated with that potentially, or sometimes there's hope, or both, grief and hope at the same time. And adjourning might not look like an actual ending, it might just look like a change into a new kind of relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we go on, I think
Yeah.
I'll just take a little bit of a break
Sure.
here. Any thoughts or questions before, I think, are we moving into a little bit
Yes.
of
Just gonna
acting,
look.
action? So I just, on webinar, Millie was talking about, when you brought up shame, Millie talked about how she's a survivor of the Indian residential school and also intergenerational trauma, and certainly there's a lot of shame with regard to that. And someone thanked her for healing or for sharing, and Millie says that's how we heal, and it's so true. There's such wisdom there. Any questions from Okanagan or Fort Rupert? So nice to see you, Pagyo, Nathan. That's awesome.
And that's
As well.
Prince Rupert, not Fort.
There's Fort Rupert there too, and Prince Rupert.
Oh,
Nice.
Both. So
Nice.
nice to see you. So no questions. So we'll just continue on. Yeah, we'll just continue on. I love that you've got Thich Nhat Hanh up there.
Yeah.
He's so lovely.
So Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese monk who practices Buddhism, mindfulness, and I have learned a lot from him.
And he suffered, I don't know if any of you
Yes.
know, but it was some of those iconic photos during the Vietnam War. He was one of the student leaders that stood up out there and brought to the Western world that this needs to end. So he was incredibly powerful
Yes.
during that time and continues to be in another way now.
He really teaches about active spirituality. So the integration of prayer and understanding the inner world, but also going out into the outer world and creating change. You can't just sit on a mountain. We need to actually get out there and activate change. He was also good friends with Martin Luther King. And so a quote that I have from him speaks a little bit to what I was talking about earlier. When another person makes you suffer, it is because they suffer deeply within themselves. And their suffering is spilling over. They do not need punishment. They need help. And in nonviolent communication, it's about not taking a punitive approach, not punishing people. It's about seeing beyond their behavior to the core of what their need is. Understanding that people behave out of pain when they're hurting us. And it doesn't mean you have to be friends with somebody who hasn't healed, okay? That's something really, really important that I think some people get worried about when we talk about this, is like, well, this person is my oppressor, they've hurt me. You can forgive someone and not hold that anger in your heart without having to be friends with them or having to have them in your life. You don't have to forget. You don't have to forgive and forget. You can forgive for your own healing and let go of them. But you can also have compassion for that person. You can have empathy for that person's behavior and why they're acting like that. So this quote has been really powerful for me, and I think about it a lot. It really helps me when somebody is actually trying to steal power from me. If some creep on the bus is trying to steal power from me, it's really easy to see that person as a monster.
Yeah.
It's really easy. but I try not to. I try to remember this person has a whole life story behind them that got them to this moment, and this actually has literally nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It has only to do with the body that I represent to this person. He thinks that I am something. He doesn't know who I am. He's making an assumption based on his story.
Yeah.
So that really helps me to be clear in my boundaries without having to steal power back.
Right. Even though you want to.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And you know what?
And sometimes that's helpful.
It is,
right?
Especially helpful to let it out later.
Yeah.
Like I have a game that my friends and I in Forum Theater do where we created this, where once we've had an interaction that we didn't get to say the thing we wanted to say, we come back in a circle and we say the story, and then we finish by saying, and what I really wanted to say was, and then everybody in the circle repeats back, and what I really wanted to say was, and it's so powerful to have that mirrored back to you, to have this whole room full of people say the thing.
Right.
So it's actually quite healing, and I highly recommend it if you have a group of people that are willing to do it.
To play together for sure.
Yeah. So I talked about power, and when we're talking about, there's a little bit of systemic stuff in here, but we're talking more about that lateral stuff. So like, let's say we're in a high school or university with students. There's 3 types of power. There's taken, so power over, which is taken or vested. It can be given to somebody, but there's not consent from everyone.
Right, okay.
So maybe the person who vested it to you took it themselves first.
Right.
An example of that might be the law system here in Canada. Somebody decided that it exists, and some people like it, but there's people who, Indigenous people in particular, who didn't consent to that. Mm-hmm. And so now it's presiding over everyone. So that's a systemic example. But in high school or in college, it might be just like somebody who's more popular, or even a teacher.
Right.
It can give us authority, which can be important sometimes. Sometimes we need to have authority. And in a healthy community, being vested with power when there's consent is very different. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot of responsibility. We have to have integrity if we're going to have that kind of power over others. And a lot of the time, sometimes there are leaders in our society that do not take that responsibility and integrity. The second kind of power that I like to talk about is with. So if you think about power over as a triangle or a pyramid with something like one person at the top, or the teacher at the top with the classroom, right? And power with as a circle. And Indigenous communities do everything in circles on purpose, because when you're in a circle you can see everyone. And when you can see everyone, there's nobody who has power over anyone else. Everyone is valued. Everyone's voice is important. So that's community and collective. And accountability. Responsibility is, okay, so a little kid needs to light a candle in front of an audience, and there's somebody in the audience. The kid can't reach the candle. Somebody in the audience goes up and lights the candle for them. That could be responsibility. But it's the kid's responsibility, really. So accountability would be the person in the audience to get up and lift the kid up so they can reach them. Mm-hmm. So working together and finding a place where I can help you do your job better, not take your job from you.
Right.
And within, inherent birthright, we're all born with it. It's agency, the ability to make decisions for ourselves, and it's integrity. Deep in our core. And I think about our core self, I think about like my core as right here, like this is my core, right below my rib cage and above my belly button. This is where my inherent birthright power comes from. And all that socialization, whether it's gendered socialization, racial socialization, whatever it is, it actually is often designed to make us forget about our inherent agency. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, like there's 2 boxes that people get put into when they're born. There's a pink box and a blue box, right? First thing anybody says about a baby, it's a, it's a girl, shove into the pink box. It's a boy, shove into the blue box. And there's all these other boxes too. And those boxes are rules, and those rules are designed to make us forget about our inherent birthright, designed to make us forget about our integrity. And so there's a lot of unpacking to be done. I'm just going to skip through here because I'm not going to do
Yeah,
this
because
section.
it's already 10 after.
Okay, 10.
After 11, so we've got about 15 minutes left.
50. Okay, that's perfect.
So
I'm right on time.
right on time. So we're skipping ahead.
So I'm just going to go.
Yeah, because you've already touched on a lot
Yes.
of that. Okay.
So, assertiveness. We're going to go straight into assertiveness. Is to hold on to our inner power without aiming to take power from others. So, even when somebody's trying to steal my power. To act with respect toward oneself and others simultaneously. That's hard. When somebody is not treating me with respect.
Mm-hmm.
I want to treat myself with respect, but I still am doing my best to treat them with respect, and you'll see what that looks like. And to be able to identify, understand, and communicate your needs and boundaries, and to respect the needs and boundaries of others. So, I guess that went in there twice, or is there? Oh, and to speak your truth. I'm not going to read that. Don't really need that one. Okay, so this is a good one. Being calm is a superpower. So I think of my core self as my inner superhero. This is what I use in my kids' workshop. So this is my inner superhero, and she is like super there for me. She's like my inner mother also. She nurtures me, she protects me, she knows what I need, and she's calm. She knows how to get grounded. It's kind of like that higher witness, you know? That part of us that sees what's happening in our lives and doesn't judge us. So, I don't need to get into this too much.
Yeah, can we go right into?
Yes, this is it. So I'm gonna share a story.
Okay.
So this story involves a little bit of sexual harassment, a creepy teacher, and I want you to know that in advance, just a little content note. But I also want you to know that it all came out on top for me. So, so don't worry, it's got a good ending. So when I was in about grade 8 or 9, a workshop that teaches assertiveness, like what I do now, came to my school and changed my life. So I had a creepy teacher, and he used to do stuff like talk broadly with his hands, and as he was doing it, his hands would brush across my chest. And he would act like he didn't know what was happening, but if your hand was brushing across somebody's chest, would you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would know.
Oh,
and he did it repeatedly. And he did all kinds of little weird, creepy things. But they were all things where you could just be like, maybe
misinterpreted. Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
So after the workshop, I decided that if he tried anything on me, I was going to use the skills I had just learned.
Yeah.
And he did try something that day. I was in the back of his class, slacking off. I was in art class. It was my favorite class, actually, except for him.
Yeah, right.
And I was at the back of the class, and I wasn't working on this big project I was supposed to be making. And he came up from behind me. He picked up the project and put it over my head from behind, so that my arms were stuck to my body like this.
Oh my.
And he had his head kind of buried in my neck.
Ooh.
Yeah. And he was breathing in my neck.
Ooh.
And he was like, it's time to get to work, Anna. So gross. So gross. So I decided to try the skills I had just learned.
Yeah.
And he dropped the project in my lap. He walked away, and he never bothered me ever again. And you're all like, well, what did you do? I'm going to tell you, and not only am I going to tell you, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to tell you the end of that story in a little while. Because the first time I used these skills, I think I was 13 or 14 years old, and they worked instantly. And I also used them on a girl who was trying to steal power from me, which I'm going to tell another story in a moment. And I used them like a few weeks later on her, and I had to do it twice, and she left me alone forever. And from that moment forward, so I'm 36 now, I've been using these skills for over 20 years. And in the 20 years I've been using these skills, they have always worked. They've always worked every time.
Right.
And I've used them on the bus with creepers. I've used them in situations with like bad dates. I've used this in situations with my mom. I've used these with bosses, with friends, with my partner. Just like all kinds of situations where somebody's crossing my boundary. I use these skills, and it's amazing. I also want to acknowledge that sometimes if somebody is wanting to hurt you physically, sometimes you can say everything right and you can do everything right and they're still going to physically attack you, which is why I really encourage everybody to take some physical self-defense courses. because it's important to know how to back it up with your body. Now, yeah, I can't really show you that, but I have some moves that I could show you if we were in a different situation, but it's very interactive. So, have you ever been in a situation where you didn't believe you could stand up for yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this thing we have called the inner monster, or the ego, the judge. And the ego is actually there to protect us. It thinks it's protecting us, but it's actually not protecting us. It thinks it's protecting us, but it's creating separation. So that voice that's like, you're stupid, you're a loser. But it's also got a voice that tricks us because it likes pyramids. And it's like, she's stupid, she's a loser. So anytime we catch ourselves judging someone, it's our inner monster. And this is from my friend Ashley, actually. Not the pictures, but the idea of the inner monster. Ashley McIntosh. So the next person I want to introduce us to is our inner child. Everybody has one. And this is the part of us that doesn't know how to react, doesn't know how to stand up. The part of me with my teacher that was like, wanted to be like, oh my God, just ignore him. What am I going to do? My heart starts pounding. I feel like crying. I feel like laughing. Why am I laughing? Those feelings. We love our inner child. They're wonderful, and we need to take good care of them because they're a signal from our body telling us there's something wrong. If I'm scared, there's a reason. It's my alarm clock, but I don't leave my alarm clock on all day. Beep, beep, beep. I turn it off. So I actually really encourage people to take a second to think about a safe place. It could be real or make-believe. That you could tuck a visual of yourself at 2 or 3 years old away into temporarily when you get scared. So tuck them away and come back for them because they have lots of knowledge and information for you. And I'm going to come back to how this is important. The second person that wants to come out is our inner warrior. And our inner warrior is also really important. Anger is the same, anger lives in the same place in our brain that controls passion, desire, and creativity. So when we push our anger down, we get depressed because we push down all the good stuff. So we also need to let our anger out, you know?
Yeah.
But in the moment, we don't want to let our anger out because it actually gives the other person exactly what they're looking for, which is a reaction. They get power when they get a reaction. So our inner warrior we love. And we're going to let our inner warrior come out if we get physically attacked. But I don't want them coming out too soon. I'm just going to skip this one and come to our core self. So I have a couple of different images for our core self, our assertive, present witness.
For those of us that like cats.
And then this one, I have a little pug. I love the little pug. Just like hanging out there, just proud and wise, and able to celebrate themselves. So I'm going to skip this one. So there's 5 steps to assertiveness. Now I'm going to leave this one here as the first one, and I'm going to tell another story.
Okay.
And then we're going to do some role plays.
All right. Good.
So when I was in same grade, I think grade 8, there was a girl named Diana who used to call me names, talk about me behind my back. She would tell people that they couldn't be friends with me if they wanted to be friends with her. We've seen this kind of thing happen before. And one time she invited me out. We had the same circle of friends. One time she invited me out and was like, we'll be there at 3. And I went there and I waited and I waited and I waited and nobody showed up. It was on purpose, obviously. One time she threw rocks at me, but she didn't hit me because she sucked at it. And one time I went outside at lunchtime and there was a circle of girls circled up, my friends. And I went up to them and I was like, hey guys, and nobody said anything. And I was like,
okay.
I knew there was something wrong, but I was like, maybe not. So I went closer and I was like, hey guys, and my one friend like half turned and was like, hey Anna. And I was like, stomach drop. But I looked anyway, so I looked over the circle, over their shoulders, and Diana is standing in the middle of the circle. And in one hand, she has a picture of me. I was on the cover of a local magazine. And she had that cover in one hand. In the other hand, she had a lit cigarette. And she was burning the picture of my face with a cigarette. How do you think I felt?
Awful.
I felt awful. I felt heartbroken. But it wasn't Diana that broke my heart. It sucked what she was doing. But she could have been sitting there doing it by herself and it wouldn't have hurt so bad. You know?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that hurt was my friends.
All your friends.
Yeah. And, I mean, have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to say something,
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't know what to say, like my friends might have been in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like now I can look back and be like, I forgive them because I've probably been in that position too. But at the time, my heart was broken.
Mm-hmm.
And as I walked away from that circle, I thought to myself, I never want to be like those other girls. If I see somebody getting picked on, I'm going to say something.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I decided in that moment, and I was having like future empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I knew what it felt like. And so a few days later, I had my chance. I was in the change room after PE class. And Diana was there with two girls that I didn't really know. All the other girls in my PE class were there too. And she was talking about a girl who wasn't in the room behind her back.
Mm-hmm.
The girl she was talking about was a foot taller than everyone else. She was from another country. She had an accent. And she was trying to use the slang words we were using, but she was saying it at the wrong times.
Oh, poor thing.
And she was trying to dress like us, but she wasn't getting that right either. And Diana was getting louder and louder and louder. She's like, she's such a loser. Like, why would anybody talk to her? She's such a freak. And the room was getting quieter and quieter. And I'm standing on the other side of the room, and my monster's like, "Ah! You're stupid, you can't do this. Why would you tell yourself you can do this?" But something inside of me, my core self, was like, no, I can do this. My little girl, my inner child, was like, I feel scared. You know, my heart starts pounding, my face was flush. My warrior wanted to come on and be like, what's your problem? But I knew that if I did that, it wasn't going to actually make it better. And in fact, it was just going to turn that around on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I tucked them all away, and I found that inner strength, and I kept breathing. And when I breathe, I try to notice how my feet feel against the soles of my shoes, because when we get scared or angry, we kind of go, "Ah!" and we like leave our body sometimes. I do anyway. So I try to suck myself back down into my body, because that makes me calm. So I'm standing over here, and she's standing where you are. Let's say I'm like a little farther away. Let's pretend you're Diana.
Oh my God, she's awful.
And I took a deep breath, and let's maybe you're turned the other way. And I just started looking at her, really calmly, with no facial expression. Now, have you ever had somebody, just an aside, look at you with no facial expression? It makes you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all know what that feels like. And have you ever had somebody look at you from behind and you can feel their eyes boring into your head? So that's kind of what happened. So she felt me. She's talking to her friends about this girl. She kind of felt me looking. So if you like, you can try that. And you can be like, what?
What?
She's just trying to fit in. Freeze. That's pretty much exactly what happened. So what happened was, I was just really calm. I didn't have any like eyebrow raise, I didn't have any like head bobbing, I didn't have my hand on my hip. I was really calm, I was really neutral, and I looked her in the eyes, and I said the truest thing I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
I just tried to go honest, in a way it was even vulnerable, right? I was just trying to be real. What's something she can't argue with?
Mm-hmm.
And I just said it.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a lot of courage, it was scary.
Yeah, yeah.
She's just trying to fit in. And Diana looked at me exactly like that and said, whatever.
No.
Right? And when
Right.
you know when somebody says whatever, they don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
She doesn't want anybody to know that though, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's trying to save face. So she like put me down and she was like, you're such a freak. Why are you looking at me? Like, you're so ugly. And then she like grabbed her bag and ran out of the room, and her friends followed her.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone in the room kind of relaxed. I was like, ah, phew.
Wow.
And there was a girl in the room who was a year older than me that saw the whole thing. And she came up to me in front of everyone, and she looked me in the eyes, and she said, that was really cool. And on the inside I was like, yeah, it was so cool. And on the outside I was like, thanks. And then I saw that girl a few days later at a party, and she recognized me, and she was like, you're the girl from the change room, come here. And she introduced me to all her cool older friends, and we spent the whole party together. And I made a friend for life, actually. I'm still friends with her.
Wow, that's awesome.
Right? And so
Yeah.
not only did I stop Diana in that moment from stealing power, but I made a friend for life. Thing is, do you think it was over between Diana and I?
Of course not.
No,
She's not going to give up.
No, and she's been so used to getting power for me for so long,
So she
because
was
my
ready,
little
yeah.
inner child and my warrior were always coming out with her.
Yeah.
So now that's not happening. She has to test it. Like, if you're tap water stops running, you don't just turn it on and then turn it off, right? You turn it on and then you turn it off, and then you turn it on and then you turn it off to see if it's actually not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's what she was doing.
Yeah.
And that often happens when we are first setting up boundaries with someone. When the first time we say no, the person will actually sometimes come back worse.
Yeah.
But if you stick with it, if you stay with it, it works. We just have to be committed. And it's hard to be committed, especially when we've been socialized to give power away or to steal power back.
Right.
So a few days later, I was at the park in my community, and we had actually a midway there. There was a Ferris wheel and cotton candy, and I was hanging out with my friends. Everybody was there. And this girl who knew both Diana and I came up to me and was like, Anna, you gotta get out of here. Diana is totally after you. And I was like, okay. She was, all that like excitement in her eyes almost. And I was like, okay, well, thanks. She left, talked to my friend. I'm like, I'm not gonna leave. So we just kept eating our cotton candy or whatever we were doing. And a few minutes later, Diana came up from behind me. So she actually I couldn't see her. I didn't know she was there. Mm-hmm. And she said to me from behind, why are you looking at me like that? Which literally made no sense. Mm-hmm. So my inner warrior wants to turn around and be like, obviously wasn't looking at you. Yeah. We all have that in us. Yeah, we want to turn around and be like, you're being stupid. I know what's going on. But if I do that, what's going to happen?
Well, she'll just retaliate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The thing is, what's she looking for from me?
Vulnerability.
Yes, she's looking for a reaction.
Yeah.
But she's not looking for me to have
Your conference
courage.
is scheduled to end in 2 minutes.
No, it's not.
No, it isn't.
No. Can we type David? Because normally it's 10 to... Keep going.
Okay. What time is it right now?
We have...
Oh, good. We still have half an hour.
We have half an hour. Okay, and I bet you there's some questions that people will have about specific situations and advice.
Right.
Okay, so go on.
So she comes up from behind me. My little inner child wants to be like, I'm sorry, okay? Like, I didn't even see you. I didn't even know you were there. Like, why?
Yeah.
And then run away, right?
Right.
But I can't let either of those people out. So I love them. I'm going to let them out later. I'm going to go home and write my journal and write all the mean words I can think of and rip through the page and punch my pillow and cry and do what I got to do. But right now, I gotta get it together, right?
Yeah.
So I took a deep breath, and so you're going to be Diana again.
Okay.
And I want you to say one more time, why are you looking at me like that?
Why are you looking at me like
Yeah,
that?
exactly. So I'm going to turn around, and then we're going to start, and I'm going to turn around as I did.
All right.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. This is fun. All right. Why are you looking at me like that?
Freeze. So how do you feel?
I feel looked at. I feel actually seen.
And vulnerable.
Yeah.
But Diana's not comfortable with her own vulnerability.
No.
So it makes her feel weak and exposed and scared. That's not how I want her to feel,
No.
but it is how she feels.
Right.
So that is what happened. She was thrown off again.
Yeah.
Now, she came right back at me. So she was like, why are you looking at me like that? You're such a freak. You're such a loser. You're so ugly. So I'm going to ask you to do that.
Okay.
And when I speak my truth to you, I want you to be like I care.
Okay.
Like, what are you going to do about it? That kind of thing.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens. And then if it feels like what I'm doing is working, you can be honest about that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll just take it from where we left off. Go.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
We cannot see you, so I'm wondering if that's something wrong on our end. All we can see is the PowerPoint.
Oh.
Which site is this?
Fort Rupert.
Fort Rupert. Okay. So we'll ask David to look at that. I'm not sure. He's probably got a setting on there for you. It might be something you have to fix with this here.
With the remote.
With the remote. With the other remote.
Okay.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Aww.
Aw. Okay, anyway, we're just going to do, hopefully you can hear. Yeah, you're not seeing
The
how
visual is
vulnerable I'm
important.
looking.
Yeah.
I'm looking so vulnerable. Okay, go on.
Okay, so we'll describe it. Don't worry. Afterward, we'll
Yeah.
describe what the skills are.
Yeah.
So now you've said it to me. You just said, why are you looking like
Why
that?
are you looking at me like that?
I don't like the way you're talking to me.
So, whatever. freak. I don't know what to do.
Okay, exactly.
I don't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to do.
So who had the power?
Well, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I wasn't stealing power from you at all.
No. You were just holding your ground.
I was holding my ground.
Yeah.
So what happened in real life was she did pretty much like, why are you looking at me like that? You're so weird.
Yeah.
And I said it again, I don't like the way you're talking to me.
Yeah.
And she said, like I care, you're a freak.
Yeah.
And I said it again. I don't like the way you're talking to me. And she was like, yeah, I heard you. Just like, stop looking at me. And then she left.
Right.
And then the next day, she didn't bother me again after that. She kind of ignored me a little bit. And then,
Right, because she was probably intimidated by you.
yes. And
Yeah.
then after a while, we were part of the same circle of friends, so we spent time together. So after a while, she started being nicer to me. And then she invited me to her birthday party the next year.
Wow.
I didn't go, and I forgive her. I actually know now that she was having a lot of troubles at home, and I know why she was behaving in that way.
Yeah.
But I just didn't need to be friends with her. I still
Yeah.
don't need to be friends with her.
You don't need to heal everybody.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
But it was a really amazing thing to discover that
Right.
just simply holding that power. So what I want to do is I want to break down what I did.
Okay, yeah, and I want to ask, I mean, I guess part of the question is if I were to think about my work environment,
Yeah.
situation in my work environment where this occurs, and I don't know if any of you in the audience can think about where someone takes power or there's conflict in a way in a situation that's like this.
And actually we can role play things that you would like to see what I would do in those
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
But first I want to break down the
Yeah.
steps so that we can really be clear on what they are.
Okay, so if you, in your head, if you can quickly come to your last conflict that you wish you would have behaved differently,
Or
think
make
about
one
that.
up that's
or make
similar.
one up. Like I don't know, you have to kind
Yeah.
of go back because nothing is so obvious. But just to think about that. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. Assertiveness.
So first thing I did, breathe. Seems pretty obvious, but actually well, we often hold our breath when we're scared or angry. So take a deep breath. I'm going to invite you to do that now if you like. And as you're doing it, notice how your feet feel against the soles of your shoes. And if you like, you can picture that little safe place. You can tuck your warrior behind you, ready to defend you if you need them. And remember, you might feel scared and angry while you're behaving calmly. And you also might be like, I don't like the way you're talking to me. Like, it's okay if your inner child slips out, or you might, get out of my face! I don't like it. It's okay to make mistakes, right? We don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
But if you catch it and you change it, it still works. Especially if the person doesn't know what you're doing. They don't know what you're doing, they're not gonna be like, you did it wrong.
Okay.
I'm going to skip some of these. Yeah, we don't need to go there. So the second step is eye contact. Eye contact is your first line of defense. It means you see what they're doing and they know you see them. Sometimes, especially for people who've been shoved into the pink box at birth, we've learned to not make eye contact.
Yeah.
We've learned if somebody's looking at me, what do? I look the other
Look
way.
down,
Oh my God. And that actually gives power away instantly. If somebody's looking at me, it's okay for me to look back. So I look back. And it's how I make eye contact though, because if I'm like,
Oh yeah.
right, it doesn't work. Or if I'm like,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. So I want to make eye contact with clear, direct, unwavering, calm and neutral facial expression. So I'm not smiling, I don't have my eyebrow raised, I don't have any attitude or energy behind it. And this is something you have to practice. So if we were one-on-one or if we were in a group, I would be actually coaching everyone through this.
Yeah.
We would be doing this together. I would be getting people to do it with one another, and I would be doing this with you to challenge you, because I'm good at it.
Right, okay.
And some people it's really natural for, and some people it isn't. Now I know that eye contact is also not cultural for everybody in the world. There's lots of cultures around the world where eye contact is taboo or not comfortable, or there's only certain circumstances
Or
where
it's
you do
very
it.
provocative.
Or it's provocative, and
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge that, and so people have to make associations for themselves about what's the most appropriate thing. At the same time, if somebody's trying to steal power from you, if someone is threatening you, eye contact is nature's way of letting them know that they don't have that power. Because if you think about animals, eye contact is a direct threat. Now, I'm not threatening you with my eye contact. If I was baring my teeth, I would be.
Yeah, you're
I'm just letting you know that I see you and you can't steal that power.
Mhm.
So I also have a neutral body. I'm in charge of my body. If I sit like this, I feel different. I feel sad and scared. I feel uncomfortable. If I sit like this, I'm like,
You're aggressive.
you know, I'm aggressive. I feel it. I feel that aggression in me. And yeah, it feels good. But sitting like this gives people less to interpret. And when there's less to interpret, it's more shocking and confusing.
Mm.
And I want to have a neutral voice. I'm not yelling. I'm not whispering. I'm not asking any questions. You raise question marks because they raise power.
Right.
And I'm not interacting with them on any level other than to tell them my truth. So, the fourth step is an I statement. Figure out what they're doing and name it with an I statement. So this is also finding your need. So if this person is standing too close to me, that's the first thing I'm going to say. Or if they're touching me, that's my first boundary. Touch or close boundary is more important than words. If somebody's touching me and calling me a mean name, I'm not going to say I don't like how you're standing, or I don't like how you're talking to me. I'm going to say I don't like how you're touching me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to stand so close to me. So it's sort of in order. Physical first, verbal second, cognitive third. So I don't like it when you try to manipulate me, is cognitive, right? Like we're not even really going to go there. We're going to go with physical and verbal if this is a really threatening situation, because that's usually the ways that people are threatening us.
Right.
But it might be also eye contact. Somebody might be looking at me, and they might be across the room, and I might say, I don't want you to look at me.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of thing. So find your truth. What are they doing that you don't like? Know your boundary. Listen to your body. Your body's giving you signals. Go down into your body and go, what's happening? Do I have goosebumps? Am I nervous? Why? What's happening? Your body never lies to you, like I said, and be very specific about what they're doing. 3 times maximum, repeat it. You don't have to be clever. I know so many of us get in conflict and we're like,
I want the line.
exactly, I should have said this and this and this, and actually the line is our inner warrior.
Yeah, yeah.
And the inner warrior gives our power away.
Right.
Because they want to see our inner warrior. They get power when I react.
Right.
So they've actually just made me react, so they actually aren't controlling me.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So you can also sandwich. Let's say I'm with a friend that's like, I don't know, wants me to talk about another friend behind their back, okay? And I like that friend that they're talking about.
Yeah.
So let's say that you come up to me and you pick somebody and you're just like, oh my God, did you see so-and-so? So I'm gonna get you to see if you can see the sandwich here, because you might know about sandwiching. I'm just gonna break it down a little bit. So, because you can be assertive with a sandwich. How's it going?
Good.
Good. It's really good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I'm so excited for dinner.
I know.
It's gonna be so fun.
I know. I'm making curry.
Yeah.
I
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Cool. Freeze. So I'm gonna get you to start to bring up somebody else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, Jenny's coming. Okay.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Great. That's
So
awesome.
she's gonna bring her guy.
Okay.
Remember
Great.
him, Rick?
Yeah.
So they're coming.
Okay. Good.
Are you excited about that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Good. Awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Freeze. I guess I didn't say it clear
No,
enough.
specific?
I want you to talk about somebody behind their back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So maybe about Jenny that we're
Okay.
both friends with.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So Jenny's coming.
Yeah.
And she's with that guy.
Yeah.
And that guy, I don't really like him. And I don't think she makes very good choices with guys. And so if she, I don't know what to do, if she spends half the party necking with him or something, you know, it
Yeah.
just drives me bananas. You know how she does that, right?
So, you know, I actually am really excited to be spending time with you. Like, I'm like super excited.
Mm.
And I'm actually also really excited that we have this time, just you and I. And I don't really want to talk about Jenny and her boyfriend.
Okay.
And I love you. You're my bud. Do you want to like have a glass of wine or something?
Okay. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
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 Awkward for a moment.
Oh, it's awkward. I felt really put in my
Yes.
place, for
Right.
sure. Right.
But I wasn't putting you in your place
No.
in a cruel way.
no, but I knew
expressing
I had
my-
done something wrong. I felt
Right.
like I had done something
Yeah.
wrong, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Okay, so your sandwich example, is that not, can that be called passive aggressive?
Passive aggressive is
Okay.
energetic, partly,
Yeah.
and it's not knowing how to get what you want. Okay? So
Right.
passive aggressive is actually aggressive. It's actually aggressive. But
Right.
it's trying to get your needs met by pretending you're passive. So
Right.
this is, yeah, I'm fine.
Right. That's passive aggressive.
Because you can see in my body language there's contempt.
Yeah, okay.
But in my words, there's no contempt, supposedly.
Right.
My tone of voice and my body language is telling you another story.
Yeah.
Here,
Okay.
it's all true. I'm not lying.
Right, okay.
Now, you might be like, maybe he would come back at me and be like, why are you being so weird? Right? He
Yeah.
might say that to me, and I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to say, hey, listen, you are my bud.
Yeah,
I just don't want to talk about Jenny and her boyfriend.
yeah,
I'm so excited to be here.
yeah.
So what I've done is I've sandwiched on the outside truth. I'm not making it up. It's not a lie.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it unless it's true because they can tell.
Yeah, yeah.
And then on the inside, I've got my I statement because I could have just said, I don't want to talk about Jenny and her boyfriend.
Yeah,
And that doesn't give you anything,
no, it
right?
doesn't tell me.
There's
anything.
not, it doesn't actually offer you anything either because let's try it again and I'm going to do it that way. Be you again in that moment.
Okay, so Jen is gonna, bring her boyfriend and they're gonna neck and, change the whole tune of the party and I just,
I don't want to talk about Jenny and her boyfriend.
Okay.
So without sandwich, it's just hard, right?
Right,
It's just hard. So what I'm trying to do is soften it a little bit. This
Okay.
also works if somebody, if there's like a sexual situation.
Yeah,
Like if
right.
somebody's like trying to make out with you and you're like,
I
I
really
really
like
like you. And
But you're just a friend.
or
No.
I wouldn't even say that because the word
No.
but acts as an eraser.
Okay.
And the word and is a bridge.
Okay.
So if I say I really like you but I don't want to make out with you,
Yeah.
all I hear is but I don't want to make out with you. If I say
Yeah.
I really like you and I don't want to make out with you right now and I'm really glad we're hanging out together. It's a different story
Really? Just
a different
using
story.
and or but.
in versus but. And you want to be honest.
Right.
Always honest. You don't want to make it
okay.
up.
All right.
And then last step. If your I statements, you've said it 3 times and they're not leaving, you can move away. But move away facing them, if possible, if they're threatening you. Because you don't want to turn your back to somebody who's threatening you. So
Okay.
like leaving somebody like this, as opposed to like this.
Oh,
is
when
more powerful.
actually when you really do want to hide your head and cut. Did I
Yes,
just do that? Oh
exactly.
my God! Let me just keep walking straight. No?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Keep eye contact.
Yes.
Okay.
So-
All right. So what if this is your supervisor?
Exactly. So, I would use definitely sandwiches with people who have power over you if you do need to, if you're worried about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes when there's people who have authority over you,
Yeah.
you have to make a choice. Like I've made choices not to use the skills before.
Right.
I've made those decisions, but what was powerful about it was that I knew I had a choice.
Right.
I knew that I could do it if I needed to, and that made me feel less powerless.
Right.
Because if you don't know that there's another way you can deal with it, but you're choosing not to, then you just get your power taken.
Right. And then
But-
you just feel like crap.
If somebody has power over me and I need to keep my job,
Yeah.
and I am going, okay, well, I could say I don't like this, but I know if I do that, it's not going to make the situation actually better for me.
Yeah.
I can walk away from the situation with a sense of integrity and esteem intact, knowing I had a choice. That's where my agency comes into play.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
So
does.
sometimes these skills work and sometimes not. Like
Yeah.
there's appropriate times you have to be street smart about it.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we can get some more from you in a second, but I'm wondering
Sure.
if there's some questions, particularly from anyone on webinar. I know that we just touched on some of this really briefly, but do you have situations or things in mind that you want to ask about, like, or get some advice from Anna about just as we're sitting here? You don't have to, but if you do, Okanagan, did you have some questions, maybe?
I would like to ask Anna, when you're provoked and the bear comes out first and then play with the child. In that situation, I find that some of the situations, I like the bear to take over and then afterwards.
And then afterwards,
What happens? There's a mess?
Sometimes.
oh, I think we all know what that's like.
Totally.
So what's your question?
Well, I'm asking, is it easier to let the child out first, or would your bear be the one that would be dominating?
It's absolutely
Is that clear?
it's dependent on the personality. It depends on your personality and your life experience. So what I notice is that women above 30 years old are more warrior or bear focused often because we're sick of it. We're like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Right? And up till
Bear.
about 30, many women are like still in the inner child, like don't want to make people mad, don't feel entitled to their power, and then a switch happens for a lot of people. But it also depends on where you come from, what kind of personality you have, because there's lots of young people who have an inner warrior that goes first. And like Diana would have been warrior focused, right? She would have been in her warrior, her bear first. But like,
So just for those on webinar, Melita just asked, can we repeat the question? And the question was, what comes first, whether it's the little child or the warrior,
Yes.
right? And
for people who are socialized in the blue box, often it's warrior first. Sometimes that has to do with hormones, and sometimes it has to do with just socialization. So guys have often learned that if they don't react aggressively, they're
not manly.
They're not manly, and they're going to be deeply shamed, which is terrorizing, because in the boy box, the most important thing you can be is powerful, right? In the girl box, the most important thing you can be is
relational,
and even more importantly, pretty.
Yeah.
The most important thing you can be is pretty and nice and give your power away. And so a lot of women react with inner child, and a lot of men react with their inner warrior, but that's not everybody.
They're survival
It's
tools.
survival, and we love them. They're important parts of
yeah.
us. They're just not leaders. I kind of picture my little girl on my left, or my inner child, and my inner warrior on my right, and they're kind of there, and they're giving me messages. My warrior's like, you need to change something now, right? And my little girl's like, get out of here! And I love them, but I don't want them leading. I want my core self leading. So she listens. She's the witness and the observer, and then she acts.
Yeah.
She makes the decisions
Yeah.
for me. Well, most of the time.
Nice.
Not always.
Nice. Okay, so to close, and sorry that there will be a PowerPoint available on.
Are we finished?
We're pretty close. We've got 10 minutes.
Can I take the
10 minutes?
Great.
To close up. Sorry, I thought we were closer than that. But we're not. We've got 10 minutes to get the juice in.
Great.
Yeah. Okay.
So the next piece is, that was really in the context of, especially if someone is like trying to threaten you, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're in a really dangerous situation. But in a context where maybe we're on a relational situation, you could use sandwiching for sure. But even better, I think, is the nonviolent communication steps. And I have been using these in my personal relationships, in particular in my love relationship. And it has completely changed my life. I've been doing it for several years. And I'm constantly amazed, because sometimes I don't do it.
Yeah.
And then everything goes to hell. And then I come back and I do it, and it's like all the things that I wanted are like, it's so easy. It's so easy. Like, that was so easy.
Why didn't I do that before? The fear just got in the way.
Yeah, and so sometimes we even, what will happen is if my partner's coming at me with something and they're kind of angry, what I might do is I might say, would you be willing to use nonviolent communication? And then usually, yes. And
figure out how to say what you need to say.
It's amazing.
Within a structure.
Yes, within a structure. So the structure here is, the first step is make an observation. So it needs to be objective, concrete, factual, and measurable. Very much like when we make that I statement, I don't like how close you're standing to me. Yeah. It's very specific, and it's something that is not an interpretation, and everybody can agree that that's what happened. So if you say, you're always standing too close to me, the person's going to be like, no way, that's not true.
Yeah.
It's an interpretation. But if you say, right now, you're standing 6 inches away from me, and that's too close for me.
Yeah.
That's a totally, you can't argue.
Right.
It's real.
Yeah.
So be really very particular with your observation. And that one's really hard because people often have learned to generalize and be like, you have such a loud mouth. Instead of saying, or like, so-and-so talks so much. Instead of saying, when we were in that meeting, so-and-so took up 20% of the talking time. I measured it. You don't have to actually measure it.
Yeah.
But like, they took up so much.
Be very specific.
Be very specific, and something that you can't disagree. It's not. It's a fact. It's like if you were videotaping it, that's what you would see. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
The second step is to state your feelings. So this is a challenging thing for a lot of people. We're not raised in this society to have a feelings literacy. So knowing how we feel often comes later for a lot of people. I don't always know how I feel in the moment. I just know that my face is hot and my heart is pounding, and so sometimes if I don't have the actual word for the feeling, I will say, or I will actually say, right, so when you rolled your eyes at me, my face got hot and I felt sick to my stomach. Mm-hmm. So that's actually just as good. It's what I'm naming is that I felt anxiety, I felt fear, I felt whatever it is, but I don't have the language in that moment because I wasn't raised to be able to identify those feelings in the moment. Mm-hmm. So real feelings. It's not an evaluation. Mm-hmm. It's not, I feel like you're selfish. Mm-hmm. Or I feel stupid. Like I feel stupid or lazy. Those are not, that's an evaluation and not actually feelings. And I have some words of feelings literacy that I'm going to show you in a minute. It's not a mixed evaluation. So earlier I used the word manipulated. So I don't like it when you manipulate me. That's not something we want to do because it's a judgment on your behavior. It's not, so I don't like it when you tell me that you know what's better for me. That's different than manipulation, than the word manipulation, which is
loaded.
It's loaded.
Right?
Yeah, so we don't want to say I feel neglected or I feel betrayed. Those are not feelings. Those are not feelings. Those are judgments on the other person's behavior.
Right.
And a lot of people do this.
Oh yeah.
I feel used. I feel ignored. Those are not feelings at all.
Okay.
It's not a thought, a judgment, evaluation, or criticism. If I feel is followed by it, that, like, I, or you. I feel that. I feel you. Then what is not expressed will most likely be a thought, not a feeling. And when we get into thought, we lose connection because we're not being vulnerable.
Okay.
So the feelings, this part is the place of vulnerability, and it's the heart is scary.
Okay.
Because we are laying it out on the table, asking the person to respond to us, and they might not.
Right.
They might not, and that's the thing about MVC is that sometimes we lay it out and we don't get what we want, or we don't get what we need. And that's where we need to have another support system aside from that person that we can go to and say,
I did it, and the person just stopped.
Exactly. So some examples of actual feelings. If you want to say you're sad, you could say anguished, ashamed, guilty, depressed. You get the idea, hopeless. Or if you feel happy, you could feel confident, delighted, encouraged. If you feel angry, you could feel agitated, annoyed, irritated, disgusted, jealous, pessimistic, resentful. I use resentful a lot. I feel so resentful right now. But you're only feeling. You're not blaming them for your feeling.
Yeah.
So their behavior triggered that feeling inside of you. And that's okay, that you're allowed to say that.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
It might have not been their intention.
It may not have been. It may have been. That's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's about owning our own feelings and recognizing that when we have strong reactions to things, sometimes it's actually about our history. It's not totally about what's in this moment. If my partner didn't do the dishes and I am like furious, it's probably about something bigger,
Yeah.
you know?
For sure. Yeah.
So other words for scared, anxious, alarmed, panicky. And again, you can always just name your physiological response. My shoulders get tense. I feel like I'm gonna throw up, that kind of thing. So the third step, so we have observation, feelings, and then our needs. And this one is even more difficult for most people than feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's so challenging because our society is punitive and it doesn't base behavior on needs. So if somebody commits a crime, they're a criminal and they're going to go to jail if they get caught. Instead of somebody committed a crime because they grew up in poverty and they were traumatized by the system and by their family, and they ended up becoming addicted to drugs to quell the pain. Like, our society doesn't look at the whole story often. It just looks at the bad behavior, so-called bad behavior, and there's good or bad, black or white. And having a needs literacy means that we understand that there's more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
So needs are universal. All people have them. If you're like, I don't have any needs right now, you actually do. They're just all met. So
Or you just haven't been able to articulate.
or you don't know what they are. Exactly. That's exactly
Express
true.
your needs.
Yes.
Right.
And they're independent of any specific person, event, situation, or action. So if I say, when you didn't do the dishes, I felt overwhelmed because I need you to do the dishes. That's not a need. Right?
I need the dishes done.
Right. I need the dishes done. Maybe so I would add, so I can feel like I can relax and not have to do that.
Yeah.
I can actually enjoy my evening.
Right.
So the need is relax.
Right.
My deepest need is relax. Right?
Right.
I don't want to feel like I have to do it.
Yeah.
So needs literacy. There's a whole bunch of areas. There's more than the ones that I have outlined here. But we might have a physical need, like when you poison my water,
Oh my gosh.
I feel
Right.
horrified and disgusted and overwhelmed, and because I need water. Like, that's a literal need, right?
But usually it doesn't come to that. It's, yeah.
Yes.
Needs are much different than that.
Yes,
I need time,
exactly.
I need,
So those
I need
things
to
might be
feel
real.
valued.
Yes. So you might need autonomy, so to choose your own values and how to realize them. So I might need to be able to make my own choices. So when you tell me what time I need to have dinner on the table, I feel resentful because I need to make my own choices about that,
Yeah.
right? There's also integrity, to live in accord with one's values. I need to feel like I have purpose. So when you are making me do detailed work all the time and not giving me an exciting project, I feel depressed because I need some meaning in my job. Interdependence, this is a really good one. There's compassion, connection. I need respect, I need support, but there's no you in it.
Ah, see.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't need you to respect me, because what happens if I only need you to respect me? If you decide you're not going to give that to me, then I'm left devastated because I needed it from you. But if I know that I need respect and you won't give it to me, I'm going to go to someone else
Right.
and create that relationship with
So
them.
you're somehow still empowered in some way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It also puts too much pressure
On the relationship.
on the relationship. So the last step is to make the request.
Okay.
Would you be willing? So, would you be willing to tell me what you heard her say? If you don't think they're going to actually change their behavior, you could just ask them to relay back to you what you said. Would you be willing to tell me how you feel about what I said. Or actually, would you be willing to do the dishes in the next 30 minutes? You know, like give them a concrete thing. And the thing is, they might say no.
Yeah.
And we know, so here down below versus the demand, the request versus the demand, differentiating requests from demands can usually be found in how the person making the request, so me in this case, responds to the no. So if you say no, and I'm like, oh,
Figures.
I wasn't really using nonviolent communication.
Yeah.
I was trying to use it to manipulate you to do what I want.
Yeah.
Instead, if you say no, then maybe what I need to do again is start again. I might say, when you say no, I feel like sick to my stomach because I really need something to change.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to work with me to find a solution?
Yeah.
So maybe the person says yes to that.
Yeah.
And this is where sometimes people are like, well, this isn't going to work with my family. And sometimes we're in abusive families. And that's why I also think it's important to know assertiveness. Because you might use these skills and the person might not respect your boundaries, might use the nonviolent communication, and the person might not change their behavior or listen to you or care. And it's really important to be able to take care of yourself, take good care of yourself, even if somebody isn't respecting this languaging.
So this is something that would be awesome for a relationship.
Yes.
To both learn it, but you're saying that you can get a benefit, of course, even if you just do it yourself.
You can get a benefit even if you just do it. In fact, the last... Oops.
I know we all have to go.
Oh,
right?
we're done.
We're all, yeah, we're done.
That's okay. We're done too, really,
It's
essentially.
okay. And we'll put this on the website. So, sorry. We
Thank
just came
you.
so close to the end very quickly. Anna, really appreciate you being
Thank
here.
you.
There was so much to learn and so much to cover. It felt like we just touched the surface and we want to practice more. Hajka for joining us. And there is more coming up. So we have lateral kindness coming up with Denise Finley, and we also are having another nonviolent communication workshop with, and I didn't even have it on here, but it's next week. So if you look on our Learning Circle website for that. For those of you that want some of Anna, we're going to put her contact info as well as the PowerPoint on the website.
You can find me on Facebook.
And on Facebook you can look for Anna. And I have a question here from Maria. You might have a chance to answer this. It says, what do you do when you're in a team environment that is dominated by two people mostly? And those two people lead the team in one direction, but the others in the team are very shy, so don't speak up. It becomes difficult for one person to stand up. It also is difficult when you're seen as a minority voice on the team. Any thoughts on standing up for yourself in a team environment? I think it's more difficult than when it's one-to-one. Thanks so much for this talk. What's your quick recommendation for that?
That's a complicated question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of answers to it. Quickly, I would say if you have the opportunity to talk to one of the people who is taking up most of the space, something I often do is if one-on-one, I don't know what your relationship is like with them, but I might take them aside and say, hey, listen, I need to talk with you. Are you open to that? I would use the skills. I would say when you are taking up this amount of time speaking, or you may not have noticed that you're doing this, I'm feeling a little bit like I'm not getting the chance to speak. I don't necessarily think that's your choice, even if you do think it is. Sometimes giving a person the benefit of the doubt will actually make them more open. Because I just need a little bit more time between comments, or I need whatever your need is. Would you be willing to do that? So you could do that. You could also connect with the person and say, hey, listen, I've noticed you've got a lot of really good leadership skills. That's like really awesome, and I really admire that about you. And what I'm also noticing is because you have so many leadership skills, I'm actually like finding myself sitting back and not taking up as much space. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to help me by like being more conscious about how much space you're taking up, just so that I can try. Would you be willing to do that? Now, if this person isn't safe to do that with, you might actually want to like assert yourself in the space and like maybe like force yourself to speak up a little bit more. And if somebody's cutting you off, you can use the assertiveness skills really calmly. You don't have to be angry about it. You just look them in the eyes when they cut you off and you say, I'm not finished yet. I'm still talking. And if they continue, you say it again. I'm not finished yet. I'm still talking. So you can use assertiveness. I would say assertiveness is better in the larger circle and calm, really calm. Not like, I'm still talking, right? It's just like, I'm still talking. I'm not finished. Own that power. Own that place inside of you that you were born with, that you know you deserve to be treated with respect. That's a really hard thing to do, especially when you are a minority in the group. And I recognize that that's a really challenging situation. I hope that kind of helps. I know there's actually more I could say, but we have not much time.
No, we don't have any time left, and I really appreciate you all joining us. And there was some really, a couple of others. I'll give you the comments here so that you can look at them. And thank you, those of you on webinar that have joined us. Really appreciate it. Yeah, look for our next sessions that are all focused on conflict.
Yeah.
And this will also be on video. So
Amazing.
available
Great.
for those on website. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
This was really fun.
Yeah.
And obviously, clearly not enough time to get through, like to squeeze it all in, but
Well, I pretty much did get to the end.
just about all of it. Thank you,
Yeah.
Davina and Shauna, for your work behind the scenes, and for eHealth for all of their work as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Great.